Hello, world, and welcome to the Innovation Coaching Podcast. My name is Klaus Hostel, and with me today I have Harley Hefford. And Harley, tell me how I can help.
Thanks, Klaus. Yeah, I'm thinking a lot about expanding my network of customers, I suppose, or people who might be interested in coming to events and workshops and small festivals and theater shows, which are all within the wheelhouse of things that I'm offering. And over the last decade, I have made a lot of these things and have had a relatively steady audience base. I would say most of the people who come to things I make are either friends or friends of friends, and that there's probably even about 300 people, I would imagine, within this group who are, repeat attendees.
Mhm.
Um, and maybe that's slightly grown over time. Of course, sometimes someone brings their friend and then they enjoy it, so they come back and then they've sort of entered the community, I suppose. But it certainly seems to me like the leap from being basically people in my own extended network to being, discovered by complete strangers is a tough one to make. And from what I can see, it's not just me who maybe has that um, challenge, but potentially others out there as well. Because, of course, when people know you or they know a friend of yours, there's that level of trust. And especially if I'm offering some sort of experimental artsy workshop that is a little hard to describe, then if someone's a friend or a friend of a friend, they don't mind so much that they don't know completely what they're getting themselves into because they think, okay, I know that guy, I'll give it a go. Whereas to market that to just anybody and try to, put it on a poster or in a video on social media gets a bit harder. And so yeah, my challenge is thinking about how I can bridge that gap, make that leap into um getting people interested in my stuff who are not just in my circle.
Yes, yes. So a little bit of marketing innovation, if we want to put that spin on it, right?
Yeah, for sure.
At least that's me stuffing it into a box where since this is about innovation, I'll make anything about innovation, right? So then we get to talk about that. But so the first thing is that is a very classic problem. And thanks for bringing it. I'm sure there are people out there listening who are struggling with something similar. So that's a great thing to bring to the table. The second is that, do you mind spinning sales funnels? Do you know what a sales funnel is?
I think so. Can I tell you what I think it is and then you can correct me?
Yes, yes, because then please explain.
Okay, so my limited understanding is that the top of the funnel is getting people's attention, some sort of interesting, quirky, whoa, it's a pink elephant. What's that? I'm a bit curious. And then towards the funnel is people developing more loyalty. And then someone at the bottom of the funnel is so loyal that they actually are promoting and helping you with the promoting and telling their friends, like, hey, there's this great product or service, you should totally do it. And they've almost become part of your team or your family.
That's an excellent explanation. And there are several ways of looking at sales funnels, but the most practical one I find is that it's the journey from what happens, how does somebody hear about you? As you said, how do they discover the pink elephant exists, to how do they go to, oh, this is interesting, to, oh, I might want to go, to I actually pay and I actually go and maybe even I come back and maybe I become an ambassador, right? But the key point is finding out where did the real question behind sales funnels and sales journeys and all that sort of circus is, where do the people who are paying me, where how does their money leave their pocket and get into mine? What does that process look like? Is it you go to bars and you talk to strangers and then they say, what do you do? And you say, I do these weird experiences. And they say, oh, that's lovely, mate. Let me go to the next one. And then they sign up and you go to the next bar. So for you, then it would be just as many bars as possible means as many people as possible. That's one way of selling. Another is going to conferences. One is social media marketing, word of mouth. There are many ways, but the key thing is finding out once you know where your next kind of how people get to pay you, then it's easier to find out, do you want more of the same or should you do different things? So the first question is, you said it a little bit already with like it's friends and friends of friends, that sort of thing. Do you get anybody coming to any of your experiences who's never heard of you or who just kind of, or of course they've heard of you, else they wouldn't be there, but who isn't connected to you either like first or second or third degree? Somebody who just heard of it on a train or saw a social media post or
I think very few. Maybe one example I can think of is people who are connected to the venues that I'm running things at.
yeah, so they don't know about you. They're just like, oh, we come to this bar all the time. Now the bar is doing this. Let's try that.
Yeah, for sure.
And then that's a good example of opening up a separate sales channel, right? You cooperate with the bar or with the school or with somebody with reach, and then suddenly you're tapping into their reach as well. Now, there are several things to unpack here, and one of them is a quick thought. That is that if most of the people who come to your things are coming because they're friends or friends of friends, have you in any way made that into a ritual into itself?
I don't think so, and I'm curious about what you mean.
So let's say that I go to one of your things, right? You were at the college some years back. Do you remember you got a pin?
I do.
You got a pin, right? And if you come the second time, you get the second pin and the third pin, and there's a backstage pin
Uh,
because people like both the memory and it's also something they can wear when they go to events and they're like, oh, you were also there. Like the dream, of course, someday is that it'll be something that people go to an event and they see, ah, the president has two of the pins. Oh, he's one of us or she's one of us, whatever that means. We're not really there yet, but the point is that if it's if you're already tapping into that word of mouth, then there might be a way to make that word of mouth part of your recruitment. Part of saying that, for example, if somebody, let's just make it simple and say somebody recommends someone, there's a gift or a special show for those who recommend others. So suddenly talking about you gives access to your special stuff, which A is something you do because you appreciate these ambassadors, and B, it might be interesting if you're constantly pulling friends to your show, then it might be interesting to get access to the special show because of that. I'm not saying that's necessarily the solution. I'm just saying that that way of thinking that if you make the whole meeting you and bringing somebody there into a bit of a ritual, there might be something there, right? That a classic for many, I'm not suggesting to go this, you get a $5 discount or that sort of thing sucks for most things. But there might be something interesting in saying, hey, I'm inviting you 20 to a special extravagant immersive dinner. And the reason is I want to thank you for being such great ambassadors. You've been to several of my things. You've talked. I know you always pull people, and I just want to say thanks for that.
hmm.
That there might be some, if you're already recruiting that way and that's how your reach is expanding, then maybe lead into that.
I love that. I Yeah, I think I've heard of several examples of people doing things like that quite effectively, like perhaps a comedian who would get to a city and give out flyers, and you could only get into the show if you had been personally handed one of these flyers.
For example, that, right? There's
Mhm.
that's a classic way of saying is giving out a certain number to some people and saying that you cannot use it yourself.
Yeah,
You have to give it to somebody. For example, right? And if you do quite a lot of experiences, if I remember correctly.
that's right. Yeah.
So it's not like if you're doing one a year, then it's hard to just say you go to the next one. But it might be saying that every time you do one, you give out at the end, you give out to everybody, you give them one free bring a friend that they can give to somebody. They're only allowed to give it to somebody new, but they can give it to somebody. that everybody going to one of your shows or experiences or whatever it is that at the end of that, you get to next time send somebody for free, which will, of course, not work if you're suddenly only doing stuff for people who aren't paying. That's only making the problem worse. But there might be something in it, or you might do an open event that's for that. Right? That leaning into that. So that's one idea, is leaning into that word of mouth, because you're very good at it and people around you, it tends to happen. So you might not necessarily formalize it, but at least make it more special. Make it something that they're like, wow, even if you say, I don't have a homepage, you have to hear about my shows. Oh, which is much cooler than having a crappy homepage.
100%.
So sometimes if a thing is already bad, remove it and then make it part of the dish. If you know you're late, then make it that I never tell you exactly when I'm there.
Is that a personal example?
It is not. It is not. But there are some things that for example, I do a lot of public speaking, and most of my speaking is done with no slides, right? I'll be on some stage and everybody else will have slides. I'll have no slides in general. And one of the reasons for that is that, one, I think that I can usually hold the audience's attention without slides, and there's some stuff I can do that I don't need slides for. So they're just extra work. Second is it spares me a lot of work, right? There's a lot of preparation that I just skip because I don't have the slides. And third, it means that I can change things until very, very late. Because if I go to an event and they wanted my slides a month before for their technical team, well, if I don't have any slides, then nobody knows what I'm actually going to do on stage until I'm up there. So if I 5 minutes before get a wonderful insight from somebody in the crowd, I can immediately take that in. And that means that instead of saying I don't do slides because I'm lazy, I say I don't do slides, and that's part of my magic. Now, for those of you out here hearing this, yes, sometimes I do slides, especially if it's a digital thing, but often I don't, both because I think I don't need them for the stuff I do, but also because, to be frank, it does make some things easier. So leaning into necessity can sometimes be good. Second part is that if we're talking about more traditional marketing, like you said, posters or making a video, that sort of thing, that can be quite effective as long as you know what it is you're selling. If you're trying to sell the specifics of something that's hard to explain, that's very hard, right? If you're selling something rational, in a rational way, you're trying to say, this is what you'll get out of it, and this is what it's about, and here's the experience, and like in a very tangible, rational, let me explain what it is, and you can make a rational decision. I don't know if that plays super well with the stuff you do, because that's hard. Where, on the other hand, let's say you made a 30-second clip of just disjointed images from stuff you do with weird, surreal music and said, are you ready for an experience? Here's the link to the next one. You're not selling what you're doing, you're selling the feeling.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's very easy to fall into the trap of trying to explain it too much.
Trying to explain, right? You want to tell people what it is you're doing and why is it interesting and why should they care and how will it be? And then they ask questions and they're like, oh, so it's like Disneyland. Like, well, not exactly, kind of more, oh, okay, I get it. So it's like a football match. Well, no. And this can be a long, convoluted process, even on one-on-one, and even for somebody as experienced as you are, because you're trying to explain something they don't really know what is. That works if you're selling football tickets, right? You want to know which teams are playing, when are they playing, but you understand the sport. If it's a crime movie, then it says the new crime movie from Crime Movie Mastermind, blah, blah, blah. It's with Daniel Craig. And you're like, okay, I like Daniel Craig. Okay, I like crime movies. Good, sign me up. But if it's something that's strange and weird and different, then you need to market it in a different way. Remember one of these, was it maybe called Paranormal Activity or something like that? It was a movie and it was like a scary movie. And the way they marketed it was that they had recorded at a test screening, they had a camera filming the audience at a cinema, and they just recorded all their screams and cries and horrors. And that's what they used as marketing. So they didn't show you anything of the movie, but they did say, this is how the audience reacts. Do you want that reaction? Then go see our movie.
Wow. I could definitely do that with the stuff I do.
I know, right? Because you do such interesting stuff, but it's also, even the little of it I know of is it's a little bit It's a little bit weird, but that's the cool part, right?
Mhm.
Where if you're doing like, this is a laughter workshop, or I will teach you how to do grant writing, well, then people are making that rational decision. But here it's like, do you want to be sucked in to the Harley Hefford universe for a little while? Okay, I don't know what it is, but I want it.
Yeah, I love
So that's a thought, at least. And then we get to the third part, my third immediate thought, which was that since you have this really cool, dedicated audience, this sort of a community even that goes to your stuff, then there's a simple matrix. And I often find myself using it when talking to entrepreneurs. It comes from an old friend, Danish guy named Agger, who teaches change management through board games. So he has a really interesting career, really interesting company called Works. And he gave me this some years back in like a random conversation. And it's essentially when you're looking to do stuff, he says you can do the old stuff for the old customers. That's selling McDonald's selling burgers to people who've been to McDonald's before, right? It's you saying, hey, I've done 12 experiences before. Do you want to be on the 13th? It's essentially the same. Okay, cool. We like the other ones. Let's go.
it.
That's one thing you can do. That works. Then you can sell old stuff to new customers. You're doing the same thing. You're just finding new people who haven't experienced it before. It can be the same show or the same burger or the same dentist appointment or whatever it is you're selling, the same cup, but you're trying to find new people. Or you can take the old people and say, I'm now doing something new. You write out to all these 300 and say, guys, I'm going to be doing stand-up comedy. Do you want to come? It's going to be $10 a head. This is the date, blah, blah, blah. And some of them will say no. And some will say, yeah, of course we do. So that's taking old people, not as in their age, but that they're already in your grasp, so to speak, in your circles, and then offering them something new. And these are all three good, right? Selling old stuff to old people, that's good. Selling new stuff to old people, selling old stuff to new people. But what S says is that most of us, we get tempted. And he hit me right where I lived when he said that, because I was guilty. He said, most of us want to sell new stuff to new people because that's where it's easy to imagine.
Hmm.
Oh, French dog walkers in Paris. Oh, I could really do a training session for them. It's like, okay, have you done training sessions before? No. Do you know any dog walkers? No. Have you been to Paris? No. And that's why it's brilliant, because here we can indulge in our fantasies and we can build up these paper tigers or imagined universes that are really grand. And then when they fail, we can always say, oh, it was because they didn't understand it, or oh, they didn't know me, or whatever. So it's easy to excuse, and it's obviously and often a lot of hard work. Where if you're doing something you already know how to do, then you just have to find more people. Or if you have the people, you just have to find something new. But the temptation was Ask's point, is that it's very tempting to look at both and say, I want to work for a new audience and do something new, because then it's perfect. Then it's on paper and it's an idea and it's brilliant and everything locks together. Where the reality is it tends to not work that well.
I'm also very guilty of that. That is it's terrifyingly relevant and great. What a great matrix.
And it's simple, right? But it works.
Yeah, it works. And to think about growth, I suppose one would either have to get more old customers, maybe I suppose people who have already been customers to return, or bring in new customers. And which, with what you were just saying, I suppose the best way to do that is to find new customers to buy your old stuff.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I think right now in if you're following world politics, you can't really get away from Donald Trump, whether one hates him or loves him. And personally, I'm more on the despise side, but he's a figure in world politics. And he recently launched Bibles, comes out and says, you can now buy the Trump Bible for $60. It has the classic Bible, and then there's some words for me and a country song, and there's some Constitution stuff and a little writing. It's like it's his Bible. And because Trump has such a big following, there are people, he has so many old customers, so to speak, that the moment he says, I'm now doing a Bible, there are people who will buy that Bible. If he does shoes, there are people who will buy the shoes. If he does steaks, he tried that, right? There are people who bought the steaks. Now, is it good? Does it make sense? Is it profitable? That's a different question. But he has such a strong brand that whatever he does, there will be some old customers who says, "Yeah, I want that because it's you." And that's if you have that incredible brand, right? I don't like the guy. I think he's terrible also for the world, but he does have a brand that is incredible. Where if we look at the other way around, we look at people who do insanely cool things, but nobody knows about them. Whenever somebody learns about them, they're like, wow, this is amazing, but nobody knows. Well, they can, of course, just try to do more for the people who do know, but they could also instead go out and meet more people. Because if you do something amazing and new people say, wow, that's amazing, your origami or your coaching or your footballs or your lawn mowing or whatever it is, your experimental theater, if you constantly wow new people, then a pretty good tactic is to find new people. And the reason we don't want to do that usually is because it's hard and it's scary and it's uncomfortable and it's annoying. Where if you have a good either product or service or experience that the thing you're doing is excellent, then do more of the same just for new people. Do the same show 10 times, but find more audiences instead of developing 10 shows for the same small audience. If you want to scale that. If you're just doing it for fun, do whatever the hell you want, right? But if you're doing it and you'd also like it to maybe pay the bills once in a while, maybe even give a bit of stability, then like if you're already doing magic, find more people to do magic for instead of trying to kind of squeeze the few people you have as super fans to just go to new stuff, because new things are a lot of work. Developing new stuff is a lot of work. Or redoing the stuff it just tends to get better and better. And you get better and better at it. It takes less and less energy, and you can do that. But for the new people, it's new to them.
Totally. It's so funny with the theater world in general. I think there is a real sense that once a show has been performed, it's done, it's all ephemeral and a new thing needs to be made. But you're so right. Like it is so much work and it's definitely a lot more sustainable and sensible to be performing the same thing for new people.
Even if we look at that world, right? Even if we look at some of like big New York and London theater pieces that have been there. I mean, I saw Phantom of the Opera with Sue a couple of years back. It wasn't for us. Let's put it that way, right? We saw it, it was beautiful, but it was like, nah, not our thing. But that doesn't matter because it's been seen by millions and will be seen by millions more. And it's running in the same theater. It's the same show, and it just runs over and over and over and over again. And while that may not be as dramatically or creatively interesting for the person who's doing the same show for night 265, I get that. It's also nice that all that work put into props and training and development and fine tuning and all that, that's paying off. Where it's very tempting to say, okay, I'm now going to use a ton of energy and then run something once. And I've been guilty of that. I come from the world of live action role playing. We've done insane stuff where we plan for months and months and months, and then we set up for days on location, and then we run a thing for 3 days, and then we pack down, then we never do it again. And if we're really crazy, we share some pictures about it. But I've also done role-playing events where we do the event and we do it again. We do it again for a new crowd every time, and some returning, some new people. And those events just got better and better and better and more streamlined and easier to run. They were still fun. And from an economic perspective, they were much better. And that was my shift from doing role-playing as doing it mainly for fun and games to trying to do it still fun, but as a profession. And I wasn't very good at it. I spent too much time on, ooh, new project and woo. One of the reasons the company crashed. Where looking back, we should just have taken that first success and said, let's just do this a lot. And then when we have built this up to be a smooth running machine, a golden goose, then we can talk about maybe doing something new. It also means the props you buy, right? If you do 20 shows with them, well, then you can afford props that are 20 times as expensive. If you train and learn how to sing a song for a show, well, then you need one song for one show that you can do 20 times instead of a new song for every show. Even that simple thing, venues, production, marketing, the whole shebang, right? You can get a lot out of that, but then you need the new people. And if you're constantly catering to the same old people, they, of course, want something new.
Of course. You were talking about literally going into bars to find people, um, which I suppose could be pretty fun. Do you have a sense of the best or the most effective place to find new people?
So I think that I, of course, don't have a complete understanding of what you do, right? Or how you recruit right now. But I would say that right now you have, if I understand correctly, you've got a fan base, a community, a group of people who like you and have been to some of your stuff and like what you do and probably like you as a person. They are your best ambassadors.
Mhm.
Because while you could go to bars every weekend and find new people and slowly grow your following, if that's what you're doing, you could go out on the street or you could make videos or you could do whatever you want. Here you have hundreds of people who think what you're doing is cool. Like just imagine that you tell all of them, again, let's do this simple trick where you write on, say, hey guys, I'm doing a new thing and I'd like to invite you for free to the new thing because thank you for coming earlier. And but there's a catch. You're only allowed to come for free if you bring a friend who hasn't been to any of my things. So this way you're helping me reach new audiences and I'm giving you an experience for free. So it's a little bit of a trade-off and it's a way of us helping each other. They don't have to come back. There's no requirements, but this is just something I'm trying out.
Mm.
Do you want to help me with that? And then some will say, hell no, you capitalist evil pig. What sort of marketing scheme is that? Were you on some terrible podcast or something? And some will say, nah, not really me. And some will say, okay, sounds interesting, but I don't have time that day. And some will say, yeah, of course I'll come. Your stuff is usually great, and I get to bring a friend. Awesome, of course I will. And suddenly you've gotten a bigger audience. That would be one way of doing it, right? Not necessarily the only way, not necessarily the right, but I think that one thing that's one thing I'd consider with your strong community. The other thing I'd consider is trying and putting together, taking some of the material you have, whether it's pictures or videos or drawings or whatever it is, and putting together some actual like marketing material, not trying to explain, but trying to kind of give the atmosphere, give a feel for what's a little bit of into the mind of Harley.
Mm.
Even that, or but one thing I did so a couple of years back, I was looking to renew my speaker reel. And what I did was I wrote out to people who I knew had listened to some of my talks, either live or online. And then I said, can I get you to record a max 30-second video where you talk about me as a speaker? And some of them never answered, and some said, yeah, I'll do it, and they never did. And some sent me back 30-second videos saying, Klaus as a speaker. And then I took sound bites of them and I cut them together into a small video and I threw in a little bit of stuff from the videos I do. And now I had a 1 minute speaker reel that I could send to anybody interested in me speaking. I could put it on my website. I could share it on LinkedIn, which is my preferred social platform, that sort of thing. And then it didn't explain what I talked about, it more explained how I was as a speaker. And it wasn't me talking, it was testimonials. It was people saying, oh, you should listen to Klaus, he's fun and he's interesting, or this sort of thing. And then I didn't need to have anything from anything I'd done. I had some of that, I could put that in, yes, but the important thing was what do people feel about, right? You could easily do that. You could put together 1 minute with 10 small testimonials from people who've been to your things. And then the last one is like a link to your next show. Doesn't have to be more than that. It doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be high production. It doesn't have to be polished. Just that simple, having some people say, wow, or you should go, or he's mad, or he's brilliant, or he's mad and brilliant.
Even better.
And then a link to the next thing.
Mm. Yeah, I love this. Thanks. You've definitely got my mind whirring with all sorts of ideas. I wonder if I could ask something on a bit of a different topic.
Yes, yes, yes. Fire away. Fire away. We still have a bit of time. So bring it.
Yeah, it just sort of comes to mind. When you were mentioning just there about the, he's a evil capitalist pig type response. I'm yeah, I'm curious what your thoughts are as an entrepreneur and someone self-promoting of the yes emotional aspect where one needs to um, step into this pair of shoes and um, become comfortable with, you know, selling oneself, I guess. Even if you do feel like you have a genuinely wonderful offering and it is um helpful and it's, not exploitative in any way and you're not, trying to get money out of people, you are just needing people to pay because you need to make a living with what you're doing, or there's costs or whatever. But I do, yeah, I do notice that I on some days with it, like really have a challenging time emotionally, like fully inhabiting this role of a yeah, self-promoter, marketer, entrepreneur, etc. And yeah, I wonder if you face that sometimes.
Oh, hell yes, yes. And I've also gone through a lot of change personally on that score. That I came from a community. I was once in a discussion with a guy many years ago, and I'd been doing role playing professionally, not for role players, but not like as art, but role playing as education, role playing as entertainment for like banks or churches or libraries or that sort of thing, like using it as a method for something else, but not. And then I'd done role playing just for fun and for volunteer work and for the art on the side as a volunteer. And then I had a talk, drunken talk, many years ago. I'll never forget it. At a role playing event in Germany, and we're at a bar, and we're talking, and we get to discuss, and he thinks that it's not okay to make money on role playing. And as I was doing that, I felt that was a little bit of an attack on who I was, so I tried to persuade him differently. And he ended up talking himself into a corner where I'd gotten him to say yes to, yes, you can make money as a plumber, you can make money as a painter, you can make money as a salsa dancer, you can make money on anything in this world except role playing. And then he was like, wait a minute. Okay, I hear myself. Yeah, of course you, okay, I got to change my mind. Of course you can make money on role playing. But it took him until then. And I think part of what's tricky in creative artistic spaces, creative artistic circles, is that there's a lot of counterculture there. There's a lot of stuff that's not done for money, that's not done for to kind of for career, which is great, right? You do art for art's sake, that's different than if you do art on commission. But there's also, and I've been in this, I've been part of this. There's also, to me, a toxic idea of trying to, instead of celebrating economic success, which makes it easier to live in the world we are in, right? Whether we want it or not, the world we are in is run on capitalist terms. There are places that aren't, and there are places that try to control it more or less. But overall, it is easier in this world to influence it and to have a good life and to help others if you have money than if you don't. And yet, when somebody manages to make their art so popular, so well liked that the money comes flowing in, then people in creative circles, sometimes including themselves, tends to go, oh, you're a sellout,
Mm.
right? In the world of entrepreneurs, if you grow your company from sitting in a garage alone with no money to $1 million and you sell it for $100 million, that's seen as success, right? If you're also making the world better, that's great. If you're making employees happy, if you're having good experiences, that's great. But if you don't know anything else and you hear, oh, this guy built a company and sold it for $100 million, then usually your first thought, if you're an entrepreneur, will be, wow, that's really cool. That sounds good. That person had success. Now, even if you don't know, right? If you find out, okay, yeah, he also stabbed his uncle to get there and poisoned the River Kwai, you're like, okay, maybe that success was bought at too high a price. But all other things equal, we see that as success in entrepreneurial circles. In creative circles, it tends to be, so this guy just sold a painting for $100 million. Very few people do that, let's be fair. But this guy just sold a painting for a lot of money. And then we say, oh, she's a sellout. What? But isn't she successful enough that she can now spend her time painting and get away from that waitress job and now actually pay her rent and go on a skiing vacation from time to time and pay some money to Amnesty International and even donate to that wellspring in Peru that she's supporting? That sounds cool to me. It's like, no, she's a sellout. What? And that's something where I've kind of The older I've gotten, the more I've traveled in circles that are not exclusively creative subculture circles, the less I've come to understand why that is. That this idea that an artist that isn't poor and struggling is a worse artist. I'm like, I don't think so. I think that Brad Pitt, who I see as a brilliant actor and I love him in movies, I think that if you told Brad Pitt, hey, Brad, do you want to do this movie for free? And he said, yeah, sure, I'll do it for free. And if you said, oh, you could also do this movie and get 20 million, I don't think you're getting a worse version of Brad Pitt because you're paying him 20 million. I don't think his art suffers from the fact that he's getting paid. In fact, I think the fact that he's getting paid insane amounts means he can also use money on charity and he can maybe buy a nice house for his mother. I don't know Brad Pitt in his life. I don't know what he uses his money for, but I do know that having access to money means you can influence the world a bit more than if you don't have. And I'm not going full on greed is good and go crazy Wall Street on that. That's not what I'm saying, but I am saying that if artists and creatives got less afraid as communities, this is a global thing, but got less afraid of talking about money and talking about marketing, about sales, and didn't treat it as something icky and vicious and evil, but as part of the game, then I think we would get better art and happier artists. So the first thing to do is to say, all these people around me who are saying things like, don't do evil capitalism. Why is it they're saying that? What if we did, right? Would if I gave you $1 million for your next show, would you become a more evil person? Maybe, but there's also a good probability you wouldn't. But what there is for certain is that then you'd say, I don't have to care about rent for the next couple of years. I don't have to care if my next show bombs so I can do what I want. I don't have to worry about this or that. I can buy groceries. Hell, I can even help my broke friends. That money has power in this world. And if we refuse to acknowledge that, then we're making our lives harder, not easier. And I am personally tired of meeting people, and I used to be one, right? I'm tired of meeting people who change people's lives, who do amazing, impactful things, and yet they can hardly pay rent. And I think if we could get a few more of these people to learn how to spend a little bit less time on the next show, the next performance, the next music piece, the next poem, the next whatever, and a little bit more time on learning how to make it economically sustainable, then we're going to see more and better art in the world, and we're going to see happier people, including Harley Hefford.
Wow.
Yeah, that got a bit long. Sorry.
No, I'm so grateful for all your insights. And yeah, I totally agree. There's something there around confidence and self-worth as well. And I suppose with a lot of other industries, often someone hires you, so there's a sense of like some other person or some company has sort of decided that I should be here and they're going to employ me and pay me
Mm-hmm.
to be in this thing. And maybe part of what's so wild about the entrepreneur and the artist, or the someone who's both of those things, is you at some point just make that decision yourself and just say, I'm going to start doing this. I'm going to start performing magic shows or doing stand-up comedy or yeah, running creative workshops or whatever it is. And I have appointed myself, and I'm uh doing some things, promoting and charging money. So I'm getting money from this, and then I just have to assume that I'm doing a good job and that I'm allowed to be here and that I deserve to make a living from doing so. And hopefully, yeah, impacting people's lives for the better, as you mentioned. And I feel like often nobody necessarily, like, of course, positive feedback and sometimes negative feedback as well, but no one really says like, hey, you're allowed to do that, or you're not allowed to do that, or you finally earned your place and now you're officially um the guy who does this. You sort of just keep going in this self-led journey. It's wild.
Yeah, and also the fact that if somebody hires you, then they're saying, here's a thing, it's worth this and this, do you want it or not? And then you can say, okay, I want it. But when you go out and say, come see my new play, my new experimental theater play about my childhood, and nobody wants it, then it's hard not to feel like, ouch. And even worse, if you call up people and say, hey, do you want to hire me to do stuff? They're like, no. Oh, ouch. Where if you're saying, I'm creating a shoe, do you want the shoe? Okay, maybe I want the shoe, maybe I don't, but it's not as personal. And the second part of that is that if you are an entrepreneur, realizing that it's not about you that much. There are many reasons for why people don't want what you're offering, and very few of them have anything to do with you. And the second part, the part that I really want to strike a blow for, is that I once had some friends who were doing a book project, insane, enormous, cool book project. And I talked to them early on, and they said, the content should be so good that the book doesn't need layout. I said, it doesn't work that way. It's like, no matter how good the content is, it's going to be better if the font is good and the layout is clear and it's presented nicely. It's not about something being good enough, it doesn't need layout, or something need good. It's about, do you want to make it easier for yourself? And if you're doing something awesome, which many people are, you're one of them, then it's so easy to say, oh, but I could do it even more awesome. I could spend 100 hours on doing something even better. Where I said, yeah, or you could spend 10 hours on learning how to sell that thing. And most of these creatives, they'd rather spend 100 hours, they'd rather have sleepless nights for a week, making the show even better, awing people even more than opening up YouTube and typing in how to do marketing 101 and watching the full 10 minutes of that video without crying on the inside. Even though, objectively speaking, they're already doing something amazing. What they're not doing is they're not amazing getting it out into the world. Best known beats best any day.
Yeah.
People don't go to McDonald's because it's the best food in the world. They go to McDonald's because it's extremely well known and there's a good chance it's not shit. McDonald's is rarely shit. It's very high, kind of lower bar. It's rarely super good, right? You get what you're getting. So you know it, you can trust it, but it's also extremely well known. Where anything else tends to be less well known than that. And if you already have the gourmet restaurant, if you already are doing the Michelin star food, then don't get a better chef. Make a nicer sign on the street or do better commercials.
Wow, I'm wishing I was taking notes through all this. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to the episode that I myself feature in.
So I'm going to give you, because we're now getting to the wrap up, I'm going to give you a tiny chance to give yourself a couple of mental notes. Because before we end, I want to do two things. One is I want to thank you, which I do all the guests, for sharing this. This is vulnerable. This takes courage to share this sort of stuff. Thank you for not just sharing with me, but with the world. I appreciate that. And I hope somebody out there is thinking, yeah, I appreciate that too. The second is I want you to take a moment and reflect, and I want you to think about three things. I know you didn't take notes, but three things you take with you from this call. Three insights or ideas or provocations or whatever you want to call them. Not just for me, but also for the people listening and also for you, because then it'll be nice memory anchors that'll stick a bit better.
Great. Well, the three that come to mind straight away, I feel like if I go back and listen, I'll have even more actually. But I definitely love this thing of rewarding people for bringing a friend, and maybe where something I took out of that as well is perhaps this idea of a limited and thus quite valuable card. So if everyone gets a card that says you can invite only one friend, like, or you only have one card to give out, so make sure you choose the person in your life who you think would most enjoy this workshop and give your card to them. Think that's lovely, and connect that related idea of like a gift for the ambassadors getting some special or bonus version or merchandise. And then I also really love that matrix about selling the old stuff and the old customers new stuff, and the yeah, the false mirage temptation of always wanting to sell new people new things, even though that's the least yeah, sustainable and practical of the four options on the matrix. And then I think finally that um actually what we were talking about just then of you yeah, it's not so great being the best if nobody knows who you are. And yeah, I think I can personally resonate with that a lot as someone who has not watched the YouTube video on marketing yet. Getting there slowly, but yeah, and just that yeah, that really lands actually there is some divide, I think, with the art world creatives feeling like um it's evil, or we're betraying our culture if we open a book on marketing or on like making some money because it feels like it's the enemy. But especially if you're really anchored in the sense of helping the world or bringing something positive to other people, then I suppose wanting to promote what you're doing is not in fact evil.
One could at least argue that, right? Thank you for sharing these three, Harley, and thanks for the time today. To all of you out there, thank you for listening in. You've heard the Innovation Coaching Podcast with Harley Hefford and me, your host, Klaus Hoste. Thanks for listening.